Good evening, everyone. At this time, I'd like to call to order the January meeting of the Town Council of Smithfield. I'd like to have an invocation and pledge of allegiance. I'd like everyone to stand, remain standing, and Councilman Travis Scott will lead us in an invocation.
Let us pray. Heavenly Father, thank you for this day that you've given us, Lord. This season that we're coming into a fresh year, Lord. I just pray that you'll bless our community, all those that are ill and sick, follow this pandemic. I pray that you'll just make this thing go away. Miracles with the vaccine, Lord. Just make this better. Help us all to stay due diligence in the things that we're doing and try to prevent this sickness from spreading, Father. We pray a special prayer for our country, Lord, as tomorrow we know is a big day in Washington, that you'll be with all those making the right decisions, Lord, to lead our country to the many years to come. Pray, Lord, as we do business not here in town, we make the decisions that benefit the community as a whole at the best. Father, we ask all this in Christ's name. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Councilman Scott. At this time, I'd like to move into the presentation section of the evening. All right. Get the cheat sheet together. At this time, as everyone had a chance to look at the agenda as presented before them.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem, yes, I have one request for the change to the agenda. I would ask that we move consent item 5 to business item number 7.
All right, number 5 to 7, business. Anything else?
Yeah, I would like for us to add an item to business for employee hazard pay for COVID.
That will be
Item 8.
Item 8. All right. Any further adjustments to the agenda? Hearing none. Motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Now, at this time, we will move into the presentations. At this time, we have a presentation about the Public Library of Johnson County and Smithfield. An update on that by Jeff Jennings. Please come forward.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. Appreciate the time to give you just a very quick update on what's going on at the library. Renita Barksdale, who's our former director, offered, she accepted another job in South Carolina, and her last day was December 11th. So the board moved quickly, and we put myself into place as the interim director. I resigned from the Board of Trustees to serve as a temporary director until the next one is hired. Currently, the job is posted. The posting comes down next week, and the intention is to have a new director in place by March. So that's the goal. So the search committee is already underway, and things are moving quickly on that. Hopefully, and we'll have some great candidates. The library is currently closed to the public. We intend to stay closed for at least another 2 weeks. We have been offering curbside service for patrons, and that has been going very well, and practicing social distancing, and we have safety and health protocols in place for when we do reopen to the public to keep everybody safe there in the building. And currently, we've been spending a lot of time doing some house cleaning, updating our signs in the library. We're taking a look at what we can do on the exterior of the building. I want to personally thank Mr. Scott and Mr. Winsman for coming by, and we're working with them to make sure we're going to be doing some good things there outside of the building, and so that we can draw attention to the public and address things up a little bit. And other than that, we currently have 2 openings on our Board of Trustees, one of which is a town position. So we can certainly invite any of the citizens that live in the town limits who might have an interest in being on the library board to let Shannon know, and we'll certainly be glad to help them with applications. So if you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer them. Other than that, just wanted to make sure that you were up to speed on what was going on and what we plan to carry out here over the next couple of months.
All right. Thank you so much for the update. Any questions? Thank you so much for your update.
Thank you.
At this time, we will move on to the public hearings. First public hearing, this is not a quasi judicial hearing, therefore no one will need to be sworn in. This is RZ-20-09, Samet Corporation. The applicant is requesting to rezone 6 tracts of land totaling approximately 258.52 acres from the B3 and R20A zoning districts to the light industrial zoning district. The properties considered for rezoning are located on the north side of Highway 70 Business West, approximately 320 feet northwest of its intersection with North Rogers Drive. The properties are further identified as Johnson County Tax ID 1507-8011, number 1507-8012, number 1507-8012C, number 15077-033C, number 15077-034, and property number 15077-033. This can be found on page 1 of your agenda packet. And at this time, I will entertain a motion to open the public hearing.
So moved.
All in favor? Mr. Winsman?
Thank you, Council and Mayor, or Mayor Pro Tem. The Samet Corporation is requesting the rezoning of the 6 properties listed below on this table, roughly 258.52 acres, rezoning it to light industrial zoning. Currently, it's a combination of R20A and B3 zoning. The next map will show that. This is the map that shows the parcels being rezoned. The largest of the parcels does extend to the south of Highway 70 Business. However, that is not being rezoned. That'll remain a residential zoning. That's the little triangular piece south of 70 there. That is part of the property being rezoned, but it won't be rezoned. Okay, it's separated from the remainder by a road. Wanted to point that out. So as I said, most of the zoning around this area to be rezoned is R20A zoning, residential agricultural. The neighborhood, kind of right on 70 there, is R10 zoning, the smaller lot neighborhood. And then the stuff in red on this map is all B3 zoning. So the fire district is Town of Smithfield. The water and sewer provider will be Town of Smithfield with annexation. Electric power is by Duke. From an environmental aspect, there is a blue line stream just south of Roderick Drive. You can see it on the map here, and it goes to a smallish pond and then kind of disappears beyond that. So this is a protected stream that would have 50-foot buffers along either side of it. So the applicant would like to rezone these 6 parcels to light industrial to develop an industrial park. Access to the proposed park would be from West Market Street and Farrell Drive. The rezoning to light industrial is consistent with the comprehensive plan designation for the parcels involved. When we prepared the comprehensive plan, we were working with Chris Johnson and his efforts to do certified sites in this area. So we, got this area guided as industrial when that plan was prepared, consistent with that effort. Light industrial zoning has the potential to create some conflicts with the adjacent residential. The UDO does have landscape and buffering requirements intended to provide protection between those different land uses. Okay? So this slide lists some of the potential light industrial land uses that could end up in the industrial park. It's not quite an extensive list, but it's most of the primary uses. As you probably know, the other agenda item tonight, ZA 2003, does have some changes to the list of land uses, including trying to create a greater distinction between the light industrial and the heavy industrial land uses. So just keep that in mind. The uses with a P are permitted. The uses with an S behind them are special use. As I stated earlier, this rezoning is consistent with the comprehensive growth plan. It's consistent with the Unified Development Code and other surrounding land uses with the buffering provided in the UDO. Staff and the planning board are recommending approval of RZ 2009 with a statement declaring the request consistent with the Town of Smithfield Comprehensive Growth Management Plan, and that the request is reasonable and in the public interest. I've included a recommended motion. I also want to point out that I did receive an email today, which you should have a copy of, from Zane Williams at 2167 US Highway 70 Business. He intended to come tonight, but due to their ages and the COVID and the risks involved for them in particular, they decided they were going to stay home. But they do say that they're in favor of the rezoning, but they did have some questions, and I have reached back out to them, providing the answers to their questions. And with that, do you have any questions?
Are there any questions from the council at this time? I do have one quick question. The list of potential businesses you had, that is under the current,
That's right.
not what's going up on for tonight.
That's
Just as a general, could you highlight some of the changes for that again, what they may be?
The primary changes are just articulating the differences between light industrial and heavy industrial. I honestly don't have a list in front of me what those changes will be, but they're in your packet. I don't think they're real consequential for this development or the parcels involved, but it is trying to differentiate between light and heavy industrial uses. So essentially we'll have heavy industrial uses will clearly belong in the heavy industrial, and then the others will be permitted to go in the light industrial. Heavy industrial uses are those that really emit odors and noise and can be nuisances to adjacent properties. So if anything, it's going to be pushing any of those type of uses towards the heavy industrial rather than the light industrial.
Thank you. Anything else from the council? Is the applicant here? Would he like to say anything at this time? Yes.
Mr. Mayor, Pro Tem, members of the council, thanks for the opportunity to hear our request tonight. The work on this property began long before we ever showed up. Chris Johnson, the county, you guys at the town, you've invested years ahead of me on creating an industrial park in this facility, creating a certified site there. We're here because of the work that you guys did, that Chris Johnson did, that the county has done, and the investments in time and energy and effort that you've made to vet that site. My mission is to take the work that you guys have already done and advance it to where it's actually being executed in the field to create that industrial park, and then work to attract permitted uses, as Mr. Weissman just described, light manufacturers, distribution companies, folks that want to invest here, build the tax base here, employ folks here. We do that generally by putting the infrastructure in the ground, helping getting that infrastructure in place, building speculative buildings, and working within our customer base throughout the Southeast to attract end users that that want to manufacture here, that want to distribute here, that want to locate their industrial operation and in use in this facility. So we feel like it's a good opportunity. We feel like it's a good location for that. We appreciate the work that you guys have done in advance of us, and we want to try to move this project forward with your approval. Be glad to answer any questions that you have.
And just for the record, can you say your name for the?
Yep, my name is Brian Hall, Samet Corporation, 309 Gallimore Dairy Road, Greensboro, North Carolina.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions for Mr. Hall?
Just want to echo Brian's comments and thank this council as well as the county commissioners for investing in the site certification. As you know, this was something that was done about a year and a half ago. And it's like planting the seeds on a farm. It takes a few months for things to germinate, and then obviously the crop has to grow, and then it's time to harvest. I think we were right at the beginning of that harvest season. And so the hard work and the planting of the seeds are hopefully going to be bearing fruit for years to come. I'm very excited about having the Samet Corporation in Johnston County. This is probably one of the few areas that we've got an actual southeastern regional U.S., someone that's very reputable in the industrial sector. And so we're expecting big things from them, and I appreciate the opportunity to stand before you and ask for your support in this rezoning effort. And I believe my wife also is one of the property owners that's adjacent to that, and I think there's an email in there from her in support of this as well. So thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else that would like to speak on this matter, please come forward. And if you would, state your name for the clerk.
I'm Helen Best.
And address.
Yes, and I live on North Rogers Drive. My concern is the water issue that's out there, and I hope that that will be resolved because I've lived there since 1968. There's always been water coming from that farm onto the properties there. Some of them, if you drive out there when we're having rains, are underwater. The middle one from my house, I live at the dead end of the street, is always flooded. There's always flood on that front corner of the property next to the highway. But there was, when we moved there in 68, there was a drain ditch all the way around it. Well, it's closed up mostly, with debris and leaves and stuff. We have kept the one behind my house, which is at the end, pretty much cleaned out. And then Miss Fleming had her tenant, or whoever was farming it, to come a couple years ago and clean out the ditch a little bit. So we do have a little bit of drain on my end, but even on both sides of my property, it's horrible. In summertime, you can't go outside after 4 o'clock because you get eat up with mosquitoes because there's always water in those ditches. So I just want to know that that water issue is going to be addressed, whatever is done out there. Because some of the people who live out there on that street have problems. Before we got the Smithfield water sewage system built, West Smithfield, we couldn't even flush a toilet if it rained. That's how bad it was with water coming off that farm. So is that going to be addressed?
Mr. Hall might be able to address that as well, but, you know, with development, they're going to have to submit drainage plans, grading plans, and so, and for instance, knowing about this drainage problem, you know, we can make sure it's addressed.
Because if it isn't, I feel like you're going to hear from everybody on that road because it's horrible.
And if they develop this, this will also be, there will be a preliminary plat review at some point, and so there'll be further opportunity for public comment.
Yeah, because the second house, I don't know how those people live there because I know they must have mold under that house. There's water standing all around it every time we have a heavy rain, but it's from that farm.
I mean, the whole site will be engineered.
Okay.
So,
All right.
where a farm is not, so.
Okay, well, thank you.
Thank you for coming out, Ms. Best. Anyone else that would like to speak on the matter? At this time, I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing. All in favor? What is the recommendation of the board?
I move that we recommend approval of zoning map amendment RZ 20-09 consistent with the China Smithfield Comprehensive Growth Management Plan and other adopted plans, and that the amendment is reasonable and in the public interest.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Moving on to item number 2, and this is also not a quasi-judicial hearing. This has to do with the closure of a portion of North 9th Street in accordance with North Carolina General Statute 160A to -299. The purpose of the public hearing is to gain input from any person on the closure of the portion of North 9th Street and adoption of resolution number 673-01-2021. Issuing the closure of a portion of North 9th Street must be adopted by council to satisfy a general statute. At this point, the actual heading on the resolution that is in our packet is incorrect. We have a supplemental resolution in our packet that was provided tonight. Has everybody found their paperwork? 3 pages long. At this time, I'd like to make a motion, entertain a motion to open the public hearing.
I make a motion, open the public hearing.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Mr. Winsman?
Sure. Mr. Dupree would like to vacate this road right-of-way, which, as you can see, impacts the property he owns. It runs right through the center of the property that he owns. And he would like to develop that property. And previously, Evanston Smithfield, you can see on the plan here in front of me, they had the remainder of that road right-of-way vacated many years ago for the Walgreens store. In that construction, and you can see the entrance to the Walgreens, the Evanston Smithfield site there. That is currently in place where the old road used to be. And so on Mr. Dupree's property, the road just ends at the property line next to the Walgreens. And the one condition that we've had is that an easement be placed over the vacated roadway for the utilities that are within that roadway. So there will be some restrictions on how he develops that property, but it will not be a public road any longer with this closure. Any questions?
Mr. Winston, just for clarification, I got a picture here. They're talking about Hancock will not be, it will become a T intersection,
That's correct.
and you'll just bring that down. So it's just closing that one.
Yes.
Here to here.
That's right.
Is there any houses that face that way, or addresses that will be affected by that?
There's no houses on that section being closed. That's all vacant property.
So the only house it looks like in this picture is in the corner. It must face Hancock.
I'm not, you mean across the street? I'm not sure where you're referring
Put the
to.
map up there. Their house must face this way.
The property that's labeled Evanston Smithfield LLC, that's located on Hancock Street, I believe that is a vacant parcel. And then the next property owned by Ricky and Paul Lisarski, that is a house.
Is that house on the corner, or is that away from the corner?
I believe it's away from the corner. Yeah.
Well, that don't show us much. That's why, I mean, I'm just trying to be clear on what we're exactly talking about.
Yeah, we're vacating, closing this segment right here.
So right there, below your thumb in that corner, that house, up, in that corner, to your left. Yeah. Right there.
No house there. It was taken down.
Okay.
I believe that was purchased by the developer and torn down for this purpose.
I mean, I don't know when this picture was, but
Yeah, sorry, I misunderstood. Yes, that house was taken down.
So in other words, no one uses that street for a residence?
That's right.
Any further comments, questions?
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, Stephen, could you elaborate for just a minute about the easement that's going to be needed for the utilities in that section? Yeah, where the road is currently, it's I believe, a 30-foot wide right-of-way. We've requested that a 30-foot wide easement be put in place of the road, so that the utilities are protected that are located underground. And this map shows that.
Is there anyone in attendance that has any questions on the matter? None? I will entertain a motion to close the public.
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
All in favor?
Thank
you.
So, Mr. Winsman, are they gonna, tear that road up essentially, or are they gonna leave it, just abandon it? Do we know?
Well, we don't know anything, but I assume they want to develop the entire site, and there'll probably be parking or something over where the road is today. We have not seen any development plans. I really don't know.
I move to adopt resolution number 673, ordering the closure of portion of North 9th Street from Hancock Street to its termination at 102.48 feet south of Brightly Boulevard.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
At this time, we will move into the citizens' comment section of the meeting. Anyone wishing to speak, if they would, address the podium and state their name and address, please. All right. Don't miss out on a short meeting. At this time, we'll move to the consent agenda. I will entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda as amended.
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, now we're moving into the business item section of the meeting. The first item will be discussion regarding the flooding in the 1600 block of South Brightleaf Boulevard, and the town manager will take this presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, Council. This agenda item was placed here just to update the council and the community a little bit on where we are with CSX Railroad in regards to the flooding that has taken place in the 1600 block South Brightleaf Boulevard. We had a meeting here in this room in December with public, a lot of those people that were affected by the flooding, to discuss next steps and past steps and where we were with CSX Railroad and the culvert in the 1600 block, as well as the flooding issues. At that meeting, it was discussed and somewhat believed that if we came up with $12,600 that CSX Railroad was going to evaluate the pipe, and all we would have to do then is discuss the placement of it and putting it in. Also, at that meeting, it was believed that the $12,600 that we would pay to CSX Railroad for that evaluation would also cover an evaluation downstream from 301 over towards 95 to see if that culvert was put in, what effects it would have in flooding other areas towards 95 from that location. After that meeting, I contacted CSX to make sure that that was a true interpretation of what that $12,600 would purchase, and it turned out that it was not. $12,600, what that gets us is an evaluation of plans that have to already be created to put in a culvert or two culverts there, as the case may be, no evaluation of anything downstream, and a permit to put it in. So in order to get the plans, what they require is 90% plans, which is almost completed plans. Will cost about $40,000 to hire an engineer to do that. So we're looking closer to $56,000 to create the plans, submit them to CSX, see if they'll approve them, and if they approve them, get a permit to put it in, and then you've got to decide if indeed we want to spend any additional money to put the actual culverts in, which we identified a couple years ago as costing about $700,000. So I ran all this information past representative from CSX, sent it to him in an email, just to confirm, had him review it, make sure that my information that I'm providing tonight is accurate. He sent it back to me, and what's in your packet is exactly what I sent him, and he approved. So I don't think there's any misunderstanding at this point on what our steps are and what needs to be done if we want to work further at improving the pipe size of our own volition there in the 1600 plow of South Brightleaf Boulevard. Bill is here. He's our engineer for the town. He, along with some of our staff, have applied for a brick grant to try to get some funding to put in that culvert. I'm going to have him step up here and update you on where we're at with that grant. And then following that, I'm going to ask Bob if he'll give you a few moments of his time to discuss the legalities of us working in that area in CSX property.
Mayor Pro Tem, Councilman, good evening.
You know,
As Mike said, brick grants are new. It's a modification of some mitigation grants that FEMA's had, but this is their first rollout of this actual brick program, which is building resilient infrastructure in communities. And this all happened very fast. Back in September, early September, FEMA put out a NOFA, which is a Notice of Funding Opportunity. Then they held some webinars that we attended to understand it. Then we had to, if we felt like we had a project that would meet the criteria, which we felt like we did with this CSX project, that we had to submit letters of interest on October 9th, and it included a lot of other documentation. We made that submittal. Then we were approved by State Hazard Mitigation to move forward, because they sort of look at the projects in North Carolina and decide which ones will move forward to FEMA for evaluation. That submittal was on December the 18th, so we're officially submitted through State Hazard Mitigation. Shannon and I actually have a Zoom conference on Thursday evening with State Hazard Mitigation, and they are going to be providing us at that time feedback on our application, and have indicated to us that we'll be given maybe about a 2-week opportunity to make amendments to our application based on any recommendations that they'll make, and we'll find that out on Thursday. So again, this all came up fast. We feel like this is a good project. We feel like we've made a good application. We have this conference on Thursday, and if they have any recommendations for making this application even stronger, we'll take those recommendations, make the improvements, and modify our submittal, and then everything goes to FEMA. And it's a statewide, actually nationwide competition for these projects. So there's no guarantee, obviously, on the funding, but we're certainly putting our best foot forward. State Hazard Mitigation feels like we have a good project, so keep our fingers crossed. It's currently our number is $708,400 is what our cost estimate was. That may be even something that we have an opportunity to amend, depending on our meeting on Thursday. So just wanted to update everybody and let you know we're doing what we can to try and find the money for this culvert project. And if there's any questions, I'd be glad to take them.
Mr. Drexler, thank you for that information, and that's great news. Do you know what kind of funding they're going to provide as far as the overall? I know they would isolate it per project, but what is the opportunity here? Do you know?
The match, the fund, their basic match is 75-25. They have opportunities up to 90%. State hazard mitigation in our initial conversations didn't feel like we would be able to get to that 90%. We were more likely going to be 75-25. But that's what I would plan for, is a 25% match.
You know how big a pot nationwide this covers, what the total funding is going to be?
I could get that information and provide it to you. I don't know that off the top of my head, but I know it's been published.
I was just wondering how much money was available nationwide.
Yeah, I apologize for not knowing that off the top of my head.
No,
I can provide it to Mike if you'd like to know it.
No, I was just curious. I mean, that's 700,000.
It's fairly significant.
A large request, and we're a small town requesting a lot of money, so I was just curious.
Yeah, I believe this was, in excess of $100 million type of project, maybe higher than that. But as I said, I've got that information, so I can provide that to the manager.
Thank you for your work on this.
Sure.
John, I have a couple of things, if nobody else had other questions I want to bring up about this. Mr. Director, thank you again. CSX is private property, is that correct, Mr. Scott?
Yes, sir.
So, in fact, we're talking about taking public money and improving private property.
That's correct.
They need to fix this problem, is the bottom line. And it's not only isolated to South Smithfield. Our constituents need some relief, and we've got to do something. And that's a lot of money for a small budget that we have, just to put in 2 culverts, and then they're making us do the permits. I personally, we got to do what we got to do, but I think we need to seek legal counsel. I don't know if they have eminent domain or all those things that will stop us from suing them, but I think something needs to happen in that respect, because this is their problem. It's our problem, but it's their fault. And this is not just happening down there. We're having a problem on Noble Street now. Have you guys looked at that? Are you
I
familiar with
have
it?
not looked at that one myself.
Are you familiar with it, Mr. Scott? No, sir. Well, on Noble Street, in the back of that property up there, they can't get to their businesses when this road, and they're saying it's a culvert. I'd love for us to look into that. The reality is, we've got a real problem here. We've got a dike through town, and we've got to have some relief. I don't know where we're going to get the money, but we've got to do something. But maybe this grant will be a godsend, a blessing to us. And thank you for your time.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, Shannon was able to pull the grant up quick. It's a pool of money, about $500 million that we're trying to tie into.
It's good.
And Bob, did you have anything you were going to add to that also, or not?
I had to do it if you want. I think the mayor wanted me to have to do it. I got a text from him just before the meeting to address this. And what he asked me to address is the liability of a town for culverts. Okay, and the concept here in the abstract is that you are responsible for anything that you have a duty to maintain. Closer you are to a culvert or an area of the water source, meaning that the more control you have over it, the more property you own that's next to it, the more maintenance you make of it, the more the liability is with you. Our balancing test is sort of like on a seesaw. The more you're there, the more weight you got on it, it's your problem. Okay? To date, this culvert has been the railroad's culvert. As Travis has said, it's not our culvert. It's not our responsibility. To the extent that we go in and fix it, we have put ourselves on the weight, on the sliding scale, and it will become more of our problem. Culverts are a responsibility of the town to the extent that the town maintains a culvert, created the culvert, took over the culvert. To the extent, like I said, that the town is there as a presence controlling that culvert. To the extent we are controlling it and controlling how it affects the water rush in the area, the acceleration of water in the area, we can obtain liability. So, as stormwater becomes an increasing issue in communities, this becomes an increasing issue. The problem with the railroad has been that they go back, obviously, centuries. And that railroad was here before the Civil War. They have special federal litigation, special federal regulations which protect them from numerous suits. Okay? And you can sue for damages much easier under these regulations than you can sue, tell them how to run their railroad, or how to maintain their culverts, for that matter, how to clean out their culverts. Sometimes that may not make the best sense in the world on a common sense basis. So why are they not maintaining it? I can say that one of the problems is, in dealing with the railroad, is they have more statutory law protection as a semi-government entity. They have more protection than the town would. If that were the town's culvert, and the town had not been maintaining it, and it had been flooded, and they'd known the problem, you know, it would not be good. But that's not the town's culvert, and if we fix it, it's still not going to be, in the sense, the town's culvert, because that's the railroad's property. Okay? And my experience has been, may change, but my experience has been, they never give you any more than a license to do something. In other words, you can go do it, but tomorrow they're not promising they're letting you do anything, okay? Because they just don't want to have to worry with a lot of culverts or people touching railroad property. So people have no right to touch it at all, and they closely and zealously guard that. So if we get this money, it would certainly be a good thing for the town, maybe to be able to go in and clean up this culvert and make it so it's more functional for as long as it works. But the frustration that many people have had with the railroad is basically due to statutes that go way back and the protection. They have more protection than DOT. And this may be I'm sure there's a lot of street water that has something to do with this on 301, the state highway. But in any case, the issues on that ditch do not appear to be town issues. So we appear to be trying to fix this out of concern for our citizens, not out of concern that we had any management over that area. We don't manage the railroad. We don't manage their culverts. We don't have a right to touch them. Okay? There's very strict federal law. And we don't manage 301 either. So that's sort of where we are. Andy had asked for me to send him a brief on that, so I did. But I think your main point to make this simple is, you know, the more you are at that point where the problem is created with water, whether that's a culvert or ditch or road, the more that is your road, your culvert, your ditch, the more you've taken over the maintenance of the ditch, even if it's somebody else's, or the culvert, the more liable you are. Here you've got a ditch on a state highway and a railroad, either one of which we control. But maybe we could help fix the problem, I think is my question.
I thought that last year, because we've been dealing with this for years, and it's not a new issue. It may have been, you know, more catastrophic recently than it's been. We've been dealing with this since I've been here, and I've been here 3 years. So, I mean, it's been constant. And I think one of the times it was asked them about just picking up some limbs. They got some trees that fell down, something that was clogging the thing, and there was asked about doing it. And the response was, we'll let you do it, but then you'll take total responsibility for that ditch. And we said, we can't do that. That don't make any sense.
Well, that is part of what I'm saying to you. The more you step in that area, okay, and assume any ongoing control. Now, I would be surprised if they said you have responsibility for that ditch as it affects the railroad. Because I would think the railroad would not let you control even their culverts. Because they're afraid you might muck up something on the railroad. But in any case, the more we're involved in it, right now we're not involved in it at all much, the more liability we have. So when we get these engineering plans, they need to be good.
So,
As a clarity to that, the railroad in the past, they did offer to us the possibility of us taking over control of ditches along the railroad track if we wanted to, but then we would be 100% responsible for them for infinity. It's not just a matter of going and cleaning them out one day and leaving, then they're gonna get them after that. They're willing to allow us to file paperwork with them and fill out their forms and take ownership basically of those ditches in regards to maintenance, forever. But that's the only way they'll really.
And actually, at this point, if we were to do it, we would be trespassing on their property.
Right
correct?
now, we would be.
The more you put your hands in it, the more it's your problem. And you're the target.
and you know, and much as I can empathize with the people who have this problem on that area over there, and it's a terrible problem. It's an aggravating problem that clearly CSX, that we've had resolutions that we passed that condemn them for their lack of action. So it's not something we've all done it over and over again, but it falls on deaf ears. They don't have to do anything, so they're not doing anything. I'm of the opinion, I kind of agree with Travis. I think we need to invest some money in finding some litigation lawyers who can go out there and sue them and go up down the railroad track, get these other towns that's got the exact same problems that we've got, because I assure you we're not the only ones. And let's get a class action suit, and if we don't win, at least we slam their name throughout everywhere. Yeah, I'm just saying, I mean, it's going to, the only way you're going to resolve it is, there's a statement that was made that said people change when the pain of change is greater than the pain of staying the same. They got no pain today. So, I mean, it's really frustrating, but on the other side, I'm going to say this. On the other side, as a citizen of Smithfield and as a taxpayer of Smithfield, I can't feel good about spending that much money and the liability on somebody else's property. I can't. I understand the people who own the property in that area want us to, but again, not living on that side of town, all the rest of the citizens in Smithfield are going to say, we're going to spend that much money for that. Yeah, I'm just simply saying we've got to balance that too. Not that they don't have a concern. So, I mean, I think it's a difficult task. I'm very concerned about us getting ourselves into liability for somebody else's problems. And I feel your frustration. Travis, you got the same frustration. I got the same frustration you got. What do we do? How do we balance that? And I don't know. It's frustrating.
This will boil down to this grant as to whether it's your money. It will not be your money if it's the grant, I suppose.
Be a match. You have to work with.
We would still take liability, though, would we not?
That's what we need to, because number two, that needs to be clearly and very closely investigated. Because to the extent we stick our hand in there, we take liability. So we need to have a very clear agreement with the railroad as to what maintenance obligations we will be assuming. Because to the extent you assume a maintenance obligation, you assume responsibility, and then due care and negligence is yours. So, we could be given the right to go in there and clean out that culvert during a defined period of time, and then our rights are gone. I don't know what they would authorize.
Anything else? Bob?
John, my concern is we've talked about this, we don't have a plan of action. I think it was just presented to us, $56,000 would start the ball rolling, is that right, Mike? $40,000 for the engineering stuff is what you've estimated, and then the other for the permit?
That's correct.
Where can we fund this from?
Right now, it would come out of contingency or out of fund balance. But the only place that has that kind of money left in it.
General fund?
Yes, it has to come from general.
I would ask you to take a look at that and bring us some numbers. I want to also state that with that consideration, Bob, I think I understand, you know, the concern, but we really have got to stand up for our community in this, and I think there's probably a lawyer out there that's dealt with these folks before and can help. Hope that maybe we could spend some effort and maybe you can talk to some of your colleagues. Because ultimately, we got to fix the problem, move forward, but I think at the same time, we could sue them for the damages.
I'll be glad to look at the liability issues. I looked at them briefly, and I said it does turn on some federal statutes. And what I saw in the brief period of time, I felt like I was authorized to look at it, was a bit contradictory. But it was clear that suing them to make them correct something, okay, that's what we really want, is difficult. Suing them for damages is a little easier. Okay, but suing them to make them correct something, kind of hard.
Mayor Pro Tem, I'd like to make a couple other comments on this. And I appreciate the staff, and I know how their hands feel tied at times with this thing. We got to remember that we're not talking about a national disaster. We're talking about a rain event that caused this. And I was unfortunate enough to be working that night. It was very treacherous out there. And my concern is, you know, this property was greatly affected. But there's other properties in town that were severely affected too. And my question is, I know we've done some mitigation with our sewer. Have we put some effort and resources into looking at our stormwater runoff where they dump into the rivers and such? What can we do to make that better? Because here's what I noticed. Wilson Street, I was asked to go get the pastor so we could open a shelter, and that water was about 36 inches on that one street. Couldn't even pass it. Maybe off a little bit on the inches, but it was very bad. And it's gotten into people's cars, and we're going to have it in their houses if it's happened before. But I just wonder what we can do planning to move forward to look at something stopped up somewhere.
We look at our drainage issues as we can. It's mostly driven by complaint. But the reality is, anything involving stormwater drainage in the town is a general fund issue. We went through a stormwater study here we completed about a year ago. The council created a committee, a stormwater committee. That stormwater committee has been meeting, and it is prepared to bring forward some recommendations to y'all. But people are going to have to realize that in order to have a positive impact on stormwater runoff in Smithfield, we're going to have some funding, and that's going to mean we're going to have some type of a fee to different businesses, residential properties, things that have impervious surface on them, so that we can create a utility, if you will, to manage stormwater. Right now, managing it out of the general fund isn't working. So that's where we are. We're ready to bring those recommendations forward and start that process. But right now, we're complaint driven, and we handle it through Public Works as we get complaints, and we don't have the manpower or the resources to go around. I had this conversation with Mr. Barber just a couple days ago, and evaluate all of our ditches and all of our pipes and make sure that they're up to par and clean them all out. We just don't have those resources.
Yeah, and I totally understand. So perhaps we could, moving forward, look at hiring a contractor, much like the guy that come and run the camera down our state, because some of this stuff is plumbed. And I'm just curious, I mean, it could be a simple blockage in a few places, over years. I think we really need to look at that. And I understand the stormwater management fee, and I think that's something we're going to have to do. Thank you, Mr. Scott.
Thank you, sir.
Anything further? Yes, please come up. State your name and address, just for the record.
Name is David Johnson, 39 Sassafras Lane, Clayton, North Carolina. I know it's taken us 4 years to get to this point. 2016 was the first flood, and it's flooded since. And it appears that there's nothing going to be done about it, just from a standpoint of suing the railroad is that's where the phrase, they say you get railroaded, comes from. But the bottom line, the water is Smithfield's water that's flooding our properties along that area. It's the stormwater that's, and my question is there going to be a moratorium on development on that side of town and in that area where that affects any of that floodplain that will continue to exacerbate the problem? I know the lady that just stood up here was assured that the water would be addressed, any of the future development on that area would be addressed, so it wouldn't continue to flood her property. But as each development gets done, additional development, there are landowners. I guess what I'm saying is my property is worthless if it gets flooded every 3, 4, 5 years. It's worthless. But it's no less worthless than the property across the street that can't be developed on because their water isn't managed. So we can say this is the railroad's problem, but it's not the railroad's problem. It's my problem. It's Perry Harris's problem. Brian Barefoot's already gone bankrupt because of this issue. Each time it floods, we're in excess of $100,000 in damages and repairs. So that's in excess of $200,000 over the last 4 years. So I know $40,000 sounds like a lot of money, and $700,000 sounds like a lot of money. But to me, that's for the town and the town's budget, and the town does have taxing authority to be able to remedy this issue. And to say that stormwater has not been a compounding issue, that we're not collecting anything to manage it. I know there's nothing put in the stormwater budget for capital expenses. I don't understand. So anyway, I guess at some point I just want an answer from the town that they're not going to do anything. They are going to do something. They're just some direction. I got to know so I can either do something with my property or do something with my tenant. And in fairness, it's not good business to keep us up in the air. And you will lose a good business and several businesses along there. I've paid taxes on that property for over 30 years. So I've come to the town now, this is probably my 4th or 5th time. And to say it's not good use of town's money, well, I guess it depends on who you're asking. But it's the town's water, and I would appreciate it if they'd keep it out of my building. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Just recently, we did have that stormwater committee formed, and Manager Scott indicated they are ready to bring that before us for a recommendation. So hopefully, I can understand your frustration. Absolutely. If it happened to me. Oh, it definitely will. So I can understand your frustration, but hopefully we can have that before us, and hopefully with this grant that Mr. Drexler's applied for, we can hope to get something moving and give you an answer. As you said, though, it is the railroad, and it's going to be a tough fight against them, and how much liability the town needs to pursue. So I appreciate you coming out tonight again, voicing your concerns. Anything further on this matter tonight?
One thing, John.
Yep.
This, and I would say this, state's water more than anybody else's. It's the state control. The fact that you own the property doesn't mean you have control. The railroad doesn't control the railroad.
Thank you. At this time, we're going to move on to the next business item, update on the drone program, and Brian Eves will be presenting that to us tonight.
Good evening, council, and Happy New Year to each of you. I will take your attention from the ground to the air now just for a few moments. So I do believe that it was summer of 2018 that Dr. Barber and Eric and myself went to learn more about drones, take a class, pass the test so we could fly drones. Since that time, there's been a lot of new developments, and I know Dr. Barber is a lot more of an expert than I am, so I may yield some of the questions that we have at the end to our resident expert about the drones. But you know the drones are, or UAS as they're referred to, and you have this in your packet. They were associated with the military, but now we're using them more for recreational use. We're using them for deliveries in certain parts of the triangle now, agriculture, fire, police. They're using that for various things, and we'll talk about that in just a minute. Right now, we use them for video and photography as a way of promoting the town's assets. If you want to pay attention to the screen just for about 12 seconds, just some quick shots that Eric and I have taken over the last 3 to 4 months as we prepare promotional videos for the town. So you can see just briefly, just some quick shots of drones, and if it'll keep going there. There's our portion of the new subdivision, and then we have a shot of the Smithfield Recreation and Aquatic Center there for you too. So right now we use them for pretty pictures and video, but there's a whole lot more that we can do. Potential use for each department that we have discussed. For fire, it could be used for hotspot identification, hazmat incidents, rescue scenarios, to be able to fly a drone and have a look at those things. For police, search and rescue, there's software that can recreate a traffic collision, and so we can reconstruct those things. Active shooter incidents, crime scene analysis, crowd monitoring, which can be an issue at some point when we can have crowds again. For Public Works, mapping and inventory, this is more of a safety issue for our employees. They could assess our equipment from the ground, flying a drone as opposed to being in a bucket and that kind of thing. Repair, much more in a safe manner. And planning can do mapping, 3D visualizations, data collection, aerial surveys, obviously with the drone and that kind of thing. So one of the things that we have talked about, at least for the public use, is to allow them to fly drones in Smithfield. But where do we do that? So we have created a public policy that we have in your packet tonight for approval or review or to make recommendations for that. A few important notes for that I've just highlighted on the PowerPoint here. If you are going to fly a drone, you have to register that aircraft with the Federal Aviation Commission. We are suggesting a fly at or below 200 feet where we are planning on our first pilot site, for lack of a better term. FAA guidelines allow to go to 400 feet, but we are recommending that the town of Smithfield, at least in the beginning, use a maximum flight height of 200 feet. I will be honest with you, there's no way to control that. We can control when they fly up to 400 feet because they won't let you go any further than that. We will not be able to control at least individual drones flying at that, but that is our recommendation. Of course, you need to keep those within a visual line of sight. Don't fly over groups of people. We don't have that to worry about, at least right now. Not flying at night, although, as I understand it in some of the recent stuff, that may be changing, and Dr. Barber may be able to speak to that. I have read a couple of things about that. So for the public use of drones, the staff is recommending that the council support future designated UAS fly zones for the public. And based on a conversation with Gary Johnson, Parks and Rec Director, our first pilot site would be Johnson Park, located at 1222 West Market Street. And so we're talking about, if you're looking at the screen, that back area that will be open. We could just do a portion of that. But right now we're looking at that. Basically, we would allow that use from dawn to dusk since you can't fly. So that's a brief overview, and you've got the policy in front of you, and myself, if I can answer any questions. If not, I will defer to Dr. Barber if you do have any questions for us.
All right, thank you.
Let me first say, I appreciate all of the work that you guys have done. I mean, we've met a number of times on the policies, and the objective is not just to have fun flying drones. The objective was, like I said, we've decided Obviously, we're gonna be able to save the town of Smithfield money, we're gonna be able to be safe, we're gonna be able to do things that we could not have done before that you can do with drones. And the price of drones have dropped so drastically, and the capabilities have gone up so drastically at the same time, that you can buy a drone for less than $1,000 that's gonna be able to do most everything you wanna do. I mean, and far more superior than those drones that were $3,000 or $4,000 just 2 years ago. So the technology is really rapidly growing. I know when we had a conversation with the captain of the police force, one of the things that he's interested in using is the DJI Mavic Minis, which are small ones, but he can fly them inside buildings, especially if he has looking for a suspect. Think about the safety involved in that. Because you don't have to have an officer in there, you can send the drone in to see if you can identify and find people. So there's tremendous opportunities for that. So that's one thing that we're hoping that we can put together a proposal when budget time comes that we can actually invest in the drone infrastructure. This policy today is more what we agreed to do was that we felt a lot of people buying drones. A lot of people buying drones. A lot of people give drones away. I just saw a new report today that said there's over 200,000 drone pilots now in the United States. There was only 125 last year, 125,000. Now there's over 200,000. So it's growing very rapidly. And people are selling these drones. There are 1.7 million drones in the United States now being purchased. So the point is people are buying these drones and they don't have a place to fly them. So they fly them in their neighborhoods, in their backyards, illegally because they don't know no better. So our view was if we could put together a policy that would give them some guidelines and give them a location that's a safe place to fly, and then communicate that to people that it's available, then we have people flying in a safe environment, which is what it's all about, giving them an opportunity to fly. The 200 feet range was decided, let me tell you, first of all, it's visual line of sight, so you can't go beyond visual line of sight. I'm going to tell you, I go mine up there 400 feet, and I can't hardly see. I have to look, you need some strobe lights or something, you get 400 feet. So 200 feet was more than enough. And there is night flying now available with strobe lights, but I would still recommend we keep what we got. Right. We don't go above that, because we're just trying to give them the opportunity to fly safely. 200 feet in our neighborhood, Roger, is enough. But I appreciate what's been done. I think it's a good policy. At least it's a start. We can always come back to it later, but I think it's something good that we can promote. The town of Smithfield can promote drone technology. We're looking at putting in some training for all of our people on being able to not just buy drones, but be able to safely use the drones. And so we have strategy for that too. But Brian and Eric and those people and Tim, they've done an outstanding job working on this policy, and I just commend you for your work.
Thank you. And the other thing is, at least from our employee standpoint, when we talk about fire, police, and public works, public utilities, from all of those perspectives, as you alluded to, it really is just a safety issue. If you're, for fire, checking a hot spot, and if you can fly a drone up without getting an employee close to that, you're talking about a safety issue. As you mentioned, flying in a building for a suspect, it's a safety issue. To be able to assess utility poles, utility lines, and that kind of thing, to fly a drone, to see everything firsthand from the ground without climbing up, it's all about safety. And we are working. We have received some recommendations from police and fire, and also public utilities, as far as what types of drones that they would need. We'll probably have to go back and estimate costs, because like Dr. Barber said, those costs are falling every day. What was 2,000 with 5 bells and whistles is now 1,000 with 30 bells and whistles.
Well, I got some comments on it. Thank you, Brian and David, for y'all's input on this. Personally, I explored in the drone thing, and I'm a recreational drone pilot. I'm not legal, but I have one. And, you can buy them at the store, and I actually bought insurance policy, and I've actually used to fly remote control airplanes, and drones come a long way from that. And I just want to make sure everybody knows there is an Air Modelers Club in our territory, not far from here. My one concern with this spot is, if we stay at 200 feet, we don't have any problem. But that is in the direct flight path for landing pattern at Johnson Regional Airport. And those aircraft are going to be 1,000 feet off the ground. And, you know, that's not much separation. So question one, where's the liability fall? And two, have we talked to the airport? You know, they have some attorneys out there that know these laws very clearly, that can help us make sure we do it right. Just an idea, totally ideas. But thank y'all for your help.
And I can tell you, just to answer part of that question, the drones cannot get above 400 feet. Once you hit that spot, as you know, if you tried to fly up there, it will stop.
That's not necessarily true, Brian. You can't change the,
You
you can go in and change, you can go in and change the firmware. You can, but you can't change the firmware. There's a way of doing it, and it's, you know, a lot of people fly 2 miles in the air, which is ridiculous, but they can do it. But let me tell you, I have a DJI drone, and I fly mine in my neighborhood over there near my house, because I got my neighbors building the house, we're outside, flew there just the other day, went up 350 feet. But my DJI drone will tell me that there's a manned aircraft and to be careful. So when they're flying, taking off and landing. And there's also, you have to have permission to fly. Before you fly, is an app that they should be using. I think we specified it. Remember, did we not? Mm-hmm. We actually have, there's rules when you go to, this document doesn't include everything, right? It tells you to go to the website, because the website should specify what you need to be doing to be safe. Now, I would suggest that we have people obviously monitoring what's going on, especially early on. If somebody's out there flying, somebody needs to make sure that they're doing it right, you know, keep an eyeball peeled. But that's a valid point, though. Have we contacted the airport to let them know what we're doing?
Right. The short answer is no. The longer answer, we want to wait until at least we have some concrete information so that we can present to them and just make sure that we are good on what we're going to proceed with. We do want to make sure that we're following all the rules and regulations. To the best of my knowledge, even though we do talk about that 5-mile radius, I think we are still legal to do what we're going to do. We will certainly make sure 100%. But I would be able to tell you, at least right now, I'm almost certain that everything that we have is in place. We'll certainly coordinate it with them once we get to an approval process and all of this stuff is ironed out, just to make sure that, okay, are we good at 200 feet? Are we good at 400 feet? Just to make sure that we're.
So if someone has a drone and they're not licensed like Travis, and they fly this, and they fly this in a non-designated area, what?
That's not illegal.
I mean, that's my question.
No, it's not illegal. They can fly, recreational flyers can fly. The problem is you can't fly within 5 miles of an airport, theoretically, if you're not a certified pilot. So flying in Smithfield, technically speaking, flying in Smithfield without having a license is illegal, because you're within 5 miles of that airport. That's illegal. The problem with that is, if you do before you fly, it'll tell you can do it. So the people are going to do it. So illegal is a question mark, because FAA, what they're going to hunt you down, they're not really going to do it unless you get in trouble. So if we designate a designated space, we limit it to 200 feet, we clear it with the airport so they know that we're doing it. They're going to keep an eyeball peeled, make sure that the pilots know that we do have a designated on their sectional charts. There will be a spot put on the sectional charts for FAA telling everybody that this is a designated drone flying area, so the pilots will deliberately know to be careful when they fly over that area, because there could be drone traffic. That'll happen. We just have to let them know, and they'll put it on the map. That's part of sectional charts. So we feel pretty good about designating a space so that Travis can go fly legally. Okay. But not just have people flying outside the backyard, because then you get into the peeping Tom rules, which are different, not FAA requirements, and safety issues, power lines, because you can't see a power line when you're flying a drone. So all that, if you put it in that desert, and there's no power lines over that space, so it's a clear space.
Yes.
So I mean, it's really a good empty space to fly on. We had talked about flying up on top of that hill up there in that new area that we got, but they're farming.
Well, and the other thing that should be mentioned too, once you do have your drone pilot license, there are certain requirements that you have to go through every time you fly. For lack of a better term, you have to create your own flight plan you have a certain list of specifications that you have to go through and check off. That way, if you're ever audited, they can come back and see every time you've flown, how long you've flown, and those records are also stored on the drones as well.
Interesting. Anything else on this topic?
So what is the intent, what do you want, Brian?
Well, if you do want to make a motion to at least approve the pilot site, we can at least begin that process with the airport. We can begin to put together a plan to release that to the public. We would like to also, we haven't investigated this as far as the cost, but a couple of signs out there to let them know that this is an approved drone flying location within the town of Smithfield as well. And then, we'll monitor it and we'll see what kind of traffic that we get as far as like the number of people, number of drones that we fly. And we'll also, look to investigate other parks. Now, there's some parks, when you talk about going in town, you've got trees and everything, and that's really not feasible. But there could be some other locations, like you said, down the line, or maybe near the dog park as well too, where a portion of that can be sectioned off as an approved flying location as well.
So can I make a recommendation? Not a motion, but a recommendation.
Okay.
I recommend that, that if everybody's okay with that spot, that we have you and Eric go to the airport. Before we approve this officially, I would feel more comfortable if we had the blessing of the airport. To Travis's point, I didn't think about that, there is a takeoff landing area nearby in West Smithfield. If it was over near there, if it was over near Smithfield Selma in the downtown area, then you're going to have problems with the hospital and with the helicopter going through there, because they go over my house all the time. So I'm just saying, I think I would feel more comfortable approving it if the airport people at the airport, the air traffic controller, felt comfortable with what we're doing, and maybe they can make some recommendations. So what I would recommend is maybe if you could take it back to them, take it to them with what we got here, and see what they have to say, and then bring that back to us next month. What do y'all think?
And that's what we're going to do here, at least make sure that you're comfortable
Yeah.
with what we want to do, take it to them to make sure that we're legal with that, or if we need to investigate another site, we can do that too.
Okay? We don't need a motion for that, do we?
No.
Good
Thank
enough.
you.
Thank you, Brian. Great
Thank you,
work.
gentlemen.
And thank you, Dr. Barber, for your input on that also. Next business item is consideration and request for approval of the East River preliminary plat revisions, S-18-01. Stephen, back to you.
Sure, you may all be sitting there thinking this is deja vu. In our process, we have there's a PUD, so there's a PUD rezoning with a plan, PUD plan, which is essentially the preliminary plat. The difference is this is a different application that's required by law for the planning process. So essentially, we're getting the master plan resubmitted as a preliminary plat, and the administrative approval of the preliminary plat is essentially saying that the plat meets all the UDO requirements, and the construction plans, which were submitted along with this preliminary plat, are probably 95% complete and correct to the UDO. There may be a few things that we're going to comment on, but generally, the plans support the preliminary plat, which are in compliance with the UDO. I have the whole presentation here, which is the same presentation I did for the master plan, but what we're seeking is an approval of the preliminary plat, and the construction plans and the preliminary plat conform to the UDO. Are there any questions?
What are the structures they're putting in that central park? Is it a picnic shelter or something?
I have a slide for that. So there's a playground, a pavilion, the mail kiosks, Be a dog park, an open lawn, and then the trails and landscaping. Some benches. That's mostly what's there.
Looks nice, thank you.
I had one question. I know it said in lieu of sidewalks on Buffalo Road, they were putting a trail.
That's right.
So the question to me, the only question I had was, is that going to be a public trail across there or private for the community? Since it's a sidewalk, it has, I'm just saying, since it's taking the place of a sidewalk, then in my view, it would have to be public accessible because that's the purpose of the sidewalk, right? I mean,
That's right.
to allow people to walk up and down the road. And then if that's the case, does the trail get close to the houses? Because that wouldn't necessarily be good either, right? I mean, just saying.
On both sides of Buffalo Road, there are proposed trails. Those will be public trails. And then there's a trail from Buffalo Road that goes to the Central Park and then to the river. That will also be a public trail. And along the river, there will be a public trail. Portion of it will be built now with the development. Kind of the southern part that goes around the cul-de-sac, that will be built. The section that goes north from the central spine, if you will, to the north will be built at some point if the trail can continue along the river in that corridor. So yes.
So all the trails through there would be, because I thought we were told last time when we had this discussion that the trails inside of the subdivision were for the people living in that community and not for the outside people.
You know, in the first version, and I believe the second, there was a combination of private and public. At this point, it's all been reduced to public trail.
So all of it's public. So I wasn't like concerned about what's going into the subdivision as I was what's running on the roads. But I mean, I think that's good if because people then can take the trail down to the river and back. You know, as long as obviously we don't want anybody to disturb the people living in the community. But I think it's a great feature for that community, not just that community, but the entire community, because you know, especially as they continue to develop that way. So okay, that's what I wanted to know. Thank you.
Anything further? Any further questions for Mr. Williams?
Need to pass that. You need
Yeah.
a motion, I'll make a motion.
I second that motion.
Does it need to be red, Shannon?
No, I didn't hear who
Okay.
made the motion, sorry.
All right, all in favor? Any opposed? Passed. Number 4, consideration and request for approval to adopt ZA-20-03, amendments to the UDO. Stephen?
So this zoning text amendment is the conditional zoning, quasi-judicial preliminary plat review, 160D, and it's been before you, I believe, twice, and the council had asked that we table it and bring it back to you again, so you have time to review it, and if you have any questions, so tonight I'm here to answer any questions you may have. And with that, if you have any questions, otherwise we're looking for approval tonight.
I think we got this about 2 weeks ago, so everybody's had a chance to
Yeah,
look at
and
it.
this is the changes that we discussed for 2 hours. Now, I think we could go through each one of those again. No, we're not. I'm messing with Roger.
If you do, I will walk out.
I went through and looked at this. I would make a motion that we accept it. And,
Second.
All in favor?
aye.
All right.
Consistency statement? We need consistency statement.
All right, where's that thing at? And I'll read it.
I'll go to the end here.
Page 9.
Where's it? This one right
Get
here?
it on the screen here.
Okay, I move to approve the UDO text amendment ZA 2003, finding it consistent with the Town of Smithfield Comprehensive Growth Plan management plan and other adopted plans, and that the amendment is reasonable and in the public interest.
All in favor?
Aye.
Up next, consideration and request for approval to purchase an underground puller for the electric department. This is on page 141 of your agenda. Ted, take it away.
Gentlemen, good evening. I'm here tonight to ask your permission to make an equipment purchase. As we've all seen, the growth coming to this town is unprecedented and startlingly fast. The explosion of growth in our town will mean that more residential subdivisions will be built, and we already have a couple of under development. A few are being discussed very seriously, and there's interest of even more to come. As subdivisions get built, the main power line is always placed underground for aesthetic reasons, in either duct banks or conduit. This means we need a machine to pull the wire through the conduit. In the past, we've used the town vac truck to kind of assist to blow the air through the conduit, and this is becoming more problematic. One, because the demand for the underground work will continue to grow, and the vac truck is being used for water and sewer concerns on an increasing number as well. We could also use a contractor, as we've done in the past. Underground installation is also used in our voltage conversion project. As we convert certain sections of town, a lot of the main lines are underneath the ground, and we're essentially just pulling wire and rerunning them. The underground puller would be used to rerun this conduit with newer upgraded wire. It is likely we'd purchase this type of equipment or something very similar in the coming 3 to 5 years. So that's why there was not budgeted for in this year. However, while looking at some equipment to order, we did come across a really good opportunity to purchase a used piece of equipment. It's a bit ahead of schedule, as I just mentioned, but we did not want to let a good deal go by the wayside, especially if it'll save the town money in the long run. So the actual puller is a used machine which currently sits in a yard in Omaha, Nebraska. Although it is used, the minimum hours on it is about 360, and that's very light. We had a local vendor price what a new comparable unit would be, and I think that was in your packet. And that, and the current, what they're asking, the current one available is about $50,000, and the comparable machine's closer to $170,000. So we had this real good opportunity to try and save some money, and we just thought we'd ask, right? I mean, it's kind of like getting that used car. You see good deals, like you might as well ask. So staff is requesting that council allow us to approve the purchase of this underground puller. We will use funds from the voltage conversion project, which currently we had frozen all the way from the beginning of the year because of concerns of COVID and budgetary issues. There are adequate funds to cover that. So there wouldn't be any need to go into fund balance or any kind of special anything. We would likely purchase a similar unit in a few years, but it's just this opportunity came up and we didn't want to let it go. So if you approve this a purchase, we'll notify the vendor tomorrow morning, and we'll begin the process of getting it shipped here. So I'd be happy to answer any questions or not. I mean, it's up to you guys. I mean, it's just a selection. We got a good deal, let's give it a shot, and then it's just a request.
Currently, how many opportunities are there for us to use this right now? I'm just wondering, I know you, as things develop and with the voltage conversion.
A couple of years ago, I don't know. We wouldn't use it. There's not a demanding need now. That's why it was on the schedule. We would use it probably every month, every other month for a couple of days. And that's currently what we would do now. And as we grow, it would become a little more, obviously more frequently used.
And in those instances, now when we need it, or we're paying a contractor to do that for us?
We're either using we're either paying a contractor on one hand, or We're using some assistance from the water sewer guys with that vac truck, because it has a suction feature on it. We kind of suck it through like a straw.
You said that you were planning to purchase one of these, and it was scheduled within the next few years anyway?
Probably 3 to 5 years out. I haven't
So
said
if you
definite.
purchase this, and you won't need to buy one in 3 to 5 years?
Correct.
Mr. Criddle, thank you for looking at ways to save the town money. I understand exactly what this does, and I think underground utilities make the town look so much better. I make a motion we approve the request.
I second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, John.
Up next, consideration and request for approval to update the public utility capital improvement plan. Page 155 in your agenda. Again, Mr. Creedle.
Mr. Critter, could I ask you a question? It just kind of
Yes, sir.
got to my mind.
Sure.
On this pooler, can we, say another town would want to rent it from us or anything? Is that something we could do?
I would be willing to do that. It's all a matter of I have no problem.
You know what
with
I'm saying? And I don't know that we would. I'm just saying if that's an opportunity to help pay for the machine and from what we would be using it.
Well, while you're on that topic, the gentleman that I pulled, the local distributor who got the comparable unit quote, he had just sold one to Wilson because they were buying 2 of them. And that was the quote for the second one. It was a similar product. So yeah, there are towns around that use it. I hadn't considered that, but I could certainly touch base with both Benson and Selman and Clayton on all of them, just see if, look, we got one. If you guys need it, we'd be happy to give you the special neighboring city deal or whatever.
I mean, I just, it's a lot of money and I understand that, and our need is going to arise quickly. And if I was a betting man, I'd go ahead and buy it myself, but I'm just saying, I'm always looking some way to finance everything we do other than through the citizens' pocketbook. And so I was saying, you know, if another town or so needed it, knew we had it, and they would rent it from us for, I don't know how much it would, you know, I'm just saying it would help offset the price, so. That's it.
Big machinery can go 500 or 800 or 1,000 a day, you know, depending on what. This type of thing would be 300 to 500 to 600 a day. So if that's something that you can make up for.
But on Craigslist, tell me you'll go wherever you need to go.
Craigslist. That's right. All right. Okay, again, thank you for letting me come and speak this evening. The purpose of this presentation is to ask council to approve the proposed update for the capital improvement plan for public utilities. As we've done in the past, we update this plan every so often to remain current, which in turn enables us to be in a more advantageous position to apply for grants and loans. As you recall, the 10-year plan acts as a guide or roadmap for the future direction of this department. Such a plan is not required by law, but it is an integral piece of planning when we are applying for financial aid from the federal and state agencies. The most recent update was approved by council in June of 2018. Normally, we update the plan annually, but until the water plant project was settled, we could not nail down the scope of this updated plan. With that issue now settled, the need to update the current plan is evident, as I think we should be prepared to respond to mounting demands brought forth by planned growth. So this is a tabular, it was included in your packet, form of the existing adopted plan. Sorry about the type, but that's what it was. It's a little small, maybe I can blow it up. The plan combines all 3 budgeted departments, electric on the top, water plant in the middle, and water sewer, kind of the bottom 3rd section. So I'd like to break down each so the final proposed changes will be clear. Specifically in the electric division, the existing plan, much of the focus was on upgrading, if you will, the town. The approved plan called for the installation of advanced metering, the conversion of the town's distribution system to a safer and more reliable voltage, generators at lift stations to assist in load management, the purchase of a new bucket truck so electric crews can access the aerial lines, potential for a 3rd delivery point, which was intended to replace the old delivery point on Hospital Road, and the construction of a new circuit to serve the anticipated growth off Durwood-Stevenson Parkway. Circuit improvements along Buffalo Road to serve the East River development, and then the purchase of a new tractor. While the long-range projects continue, we've already purchased the new bucket truck and the new tractor. I can also gladly report that we should be finished with the installation of all electric meters, residential and commercial, by the end of this budget year. Additionally, the pursuit of a third delivery point has been terminated because at this point in time, a suitable location and amenable landowner have not been identified. It is of note also that, well, no. So where does that leave us? The proposed plan continues the long-term infrastructure improvement projects. One subtle change is the inclusion of an upgrade to the delivery point number 1 along Hospital Road, allowing another circuit to be constructed from delivery point 1 if needed northward to serve expanded future development. Another change is the emergence of a municipal battery industry. Recent court cases have favored our ability to utilize municipal batteries to offset electric load, and we will begin to study this issue to hopefully take advantage of this technology and potentially save the town significant monies. Over at the water plant, the existing plan focused on some improvements along the river, the external control processes, short-term chemical needs, long-term plant upgrades, and the desire to put 2 systems into one, all in preparation for future plant expansion. Certain improvements have been achieved. Also, the long-term processes were rolled into the water plant project and will be incorporated into the construction over the next 2 years. We have pushed the less needed projects off into the future and placed the emphasis on the approved plant project. The proposed plan maintains the emphasis on the water plant improvement project, but also recognizes the issue at the intake along the river, which was not addressed in the improvement project and will likely need attention in the coming years. In response to growing development pressures, we are looking to construct a backbone of water lines east of I-95 to be prepared for whatever the future has in store. We keep the inclusion of the 2 systems into one system, that's folding South Smithfield into the town, but we just do push it out a bit as the need is not great or pressing at this time. The existing plans for water and sewer reflect the need for overall system improvements. There's a lot of it there. It has to deal with water line upgrades, upgrade to town lift stations. Many projects were presented to improve the overall system. Both long-term and current needs were included in the plan to address issues and avoid infrastructure falling into disrepair. Since June of 2018, some of the immediate needs were met, with smaller projects were completed. Most of the rest of the projects are still ongoing, but we do show some success in rehabilitation of the overall system. The updated plan retains many of the same long-term goals. Again, the immediate need is dovetailed with the long-term goal of overall system improvement. We are targeting the worst areas to rehabilitate while maintaining reliable areas through consistent construction repair projects. So again, this was the plan as it currently adopted in tabular form. This table then highlights what has been accomplished since 2018 in red, and then we therefore remove that list along with the funding numbers for those projects. And then as discussed, we've inserted those changes now in blue. So we've redistributed the monies in all 3 departments to allow for the immediate needs of the water plant improvement project, the exploration of municipal battery usage, and the construction of the water line east of I-95 to again act as a backbone for development. So we end up with a new proposed plan condensed into one table. And in summary, the new capital improvement plan sets the roadmap for the next 10 years. It allows the electric division to capitalize on the Brogdon Road transformer, providing much-needed electrical service north side of town. The water fund redistributes monies to allow for the water plant improvement project and keeps the expansion of the town's water system moving forward, while maintaining an eye for long-term infrastructure and upgrade needs. I remind the council that this plan, like all plans, is non-binding. Actual budgetary numbers are only worked out annually during budget process for the coming fiscal year. As needs change, staff will always return to council to keep the plan updated and current. So I'd like to thank you for your time this evening. I'd be happy to discuss any of the items, make any improvement or changes that you desire, or answer any questions you have.
Any questions for Ted?
Mr. Creedle, thank you for the presentation. It's always good to see us planning for the future, and we understand things change. One thing I'd ask you to add to it, and we can talk about this later, talked about it for many years, is load management. You know, we need to put some money in that for our residential customers so we can help them save money and we can save money. I know it goes along with smart meters, and we can talk about it later, but I feel like it's important. I didn't see it in here.
It's not specifically there.
Okay.
But I could add it if you'd prefer.
Well, I mean, I think it's an improvement, so.
Or we can look at it budgetarily every year.
Okay, well, let's talk about it.
Okay.
I asked a question, because I just dawned on me. I know one time we had problems with the water pressure in the different tanks when we added the 2 tanks, and you had to put this valve in it to allow more pressure.
Yes, sir.
And it blew everything up, and then you had to go back and do something else. And I don't remember where we are on that. I mean, did that ever get resolved so that we're now fully pressurized in both tanks?
Well, we're not blowing up around town anymore, so yeah, we've resolved it to the extent that we can resolve it. If we need to raise pressure, all the valves are in, all the tanks are there, everything's working the way it should. If we need to raise pressure, our concern is we don't want to overpressurize the system so it starts blowing up, so we go real slow and real careful, but we're pretty good as, everywhere we test, we get over 40 to 45, 50, 60 PSI, depending on what part of town, so we feel that's adequate enough.
And my understanding is the 16-inch pipe that's across dirt that's gonna go across the News River, underneath the News River. It says we're halfway done. What does that mean?
Okay, yeah. Phase 1 was from Market Street all the way around Wilson Mills Road and then kind of down the hill, and we stopped right at the bridge.
Okay.
Phase 2, which is currently under design and getting approval, goes from basically alongside the bridge, underneath the river, and connects to Mr. Twisdale's property right there. So we did phase 1, that's complete, we're halfway
Okay.
done. We're just doing phase 2, and that should be done this budget year.
And my understanding is that's gonna improve water pressure in West Smithfield?
It will stabilize water pressure, it will not improve, it will not increase
Stabilize water
it.
pressure.
It will not increase it, but the fluctuation, if there is any fluctuation, the only way you increase water pressure is to either add a pump or add another tower. And there are no plans currently for that.
That was at one time, but my understanding is that the decision was made to connect the loop because then we didn't need the tower. That's what my understanding was at the time we took that out, was that adding the loop, so it's a complete loop system, was no need then to have the tower.
The tower was removed because what we looked at in the water model, a second tower gave us very little bang for our buck. The cost was going to be upwards of $1 million, and it would only raise it 2 or 3 to 5 PSI. It just wasn't worth it. But by adding the loop, we stabilized the pressure so you wouldn't see a drop or any kind of swing should something occur on one side of West Smithfield, say down by the Johnston County School thing down on 210, in that area, it wouldn't affect the neighborhood and vice versa.
How was the new expansion out there in West Smithfield? Because we are anticipating, of course, not just this expansion that we're getting now, I mean, this new development that's going to be developed out there, but we're anticipating that to keep going, right? I mean, why wouldn't we expect to keep moving towards Clayton? How are we setting ourselves up, and it's all related to this plan, how are we setting ourselves up to ensure water capacity pressure that way? You know what I'm saying? And that's because, well, what are we doing? What's our long-term plan for that?
No, the 16-inch line going down Durwood, which is what we've been talking about, is designed to deliver adequate water to that area. That's it. I mean, that is the plan, and that would have worked. It would serve multiple purposes. That's one. The second is allow a more reliable feed to the county's delivery point where we sell the county water, which is farther up, almost up by Barber Road. So the capacity's there. That's what we're actually doing. We're building in the capacity and stabilizing the pressure. There is no plan to increase pressure on that side of the road. If the individual development, and right now all I've seen is a bubble sheet, so to speak. If an individual industry or business or whatever needs more, we'll talk at that point. I mean, there are ways they can have an on-site pump or something of that nature to increase their own needs.
Okay.
Mayor Pro Tem, I'll make a motion, we approve the capital improvement plan as presented.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
At this time, we will move on to business item number 7, which was moved from the consent agenda. This is employing the services of a collection agency to collect on closed utility accounts and past due balances. Thank you, Greg.
Hi, John. Thank you,
John, that's page 69, just so.
Mayor
Yes.
Pro Tem
Excuse me for that.
and Councilman. So as you read, right, we are seeking approval to enter an agreement with Penn Incorporated. They are a collection agency that comes recommended and vetted by the North Carolina League. Just to give you a little history, let's see, my first year with the town was the latter part of 2013. When I came here, we had just completed a little more than a year's agreement with another collection company. Their rate for assisting us with collecting debt was half of what they collected, 50%. And they didn't perform as expected, so that contract wasn't renewed. So we've been several years without any assistance in collecting on past due accounts. Auditors brought it to our attention that they'd like us to write off any debts that are deemed uncollectible, although that doesn't, again, have to be immediate. And so what we'd like to do is to employ outside help, because we don't have the staff to pursue these on a daily basis, or the technology for that matter. And with that, I'll ask if there's any questions.
Greg, thank you, and I'll be very brief. I just had a couple questions. I didn't get a chance to talk to you. With this program, I understand this is only for closed accounts. This is not for existing customers. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And the reason I wanted to ask you is I thought that as a municipality, we had the privilege to do debt set-off, to collect bad debt. Will they be using that procedure?
They do not use debt set-off. That's still something for municipalities to use. And we use that currently. Prior to 2014, we were collecting some $80,000 a year through debt set-off because it would garnish North Carolina state tax refunds if folks had one time back to them. Of course, as you can imagine, often we would get in line. We're after them. Sometimes other folks are after them too. When the tax law changed in 2014, I don't know if you remember, if you're working or an employer, you had to have your employees do a new NC4 form stating their withholdings. And the state has become stricter with the withholdings. And so now, because of that, we get half of what we once collected through the state. Because most folks at year end up breaking even or owing the state now, as opposed to the state owing them money. So we do get some monies, but it's not what it was in its most lucrative days.
Okay. And you said the old company, when 2013 was about 50%, this one looks like a much better deal.
It's a much better deal. Okay. I was taken back when I heard it was only 18%. I've never dealt with a company that charged so little. Don't know how they do it, but willing to give them a try.
My biggest concern was to make sure that this wasn't going to be, we have a policy in place that we're not going to be, we work with our customers that are behind. Obviously, the pandemic has caused a lot of issues. I know you guys have worked very hard, but this wasn't something that steered that. This is just a replacement of an old company.
Correct. Well, not so much a replacement because we haven't used anyone now for 7 years, but because our uncollected balances continue to increase, and they have gotten worse in part because of the pandemic. Now is a good time to pursue help in the collection of these accounts.
This is, again, only on accounts that are currently closed.
Accounts that are closed,
And
not active accounts.
the debt offset with the state, is that going to be something that's also continuing too? Because when that money comes in, that will be solely our money.
Correct.
Okay, so we'll continue that policy in addition to this outside service.
Right. So the collection company would still go after everyone that we submit a file to them on. If we happen to collect through debt set-off first, that's exempt from their 18%.
Very good.
And isn't this, but as you said before, this is in direct response, though, to an audit finding that was brought up the last time when we had the audit review, that we had, that was one of the findings they had, that we had outstanding debts not paid, correct? I mean, that was one of their findings, am I right?
Because the auditor mentioned that in the write-up, it is motivation.
Right. I'm just saying it was something, it is also addressing an issue in a finding, not a bad finding, but in an observation finding from the auditor. So it's addressing that issue also. It's not something you just come up on your own really per se. It's actually also driven by the auditor.
Right. We weren't as concerned about write-offs because we write off without, that's the wrong word. We charge off any accounts during the year that are 90 days past due. It's called an allowance for bad debt. So what they wish to do is just to reconcile because they're constantly writing off every year. But it's just based on what's on the books. They want to actually know, is this debt absolutely uncollectible or is it not? So they want some type of reconciliation done.
Mayor Pro Tem Dunn, I make a motion to approve the request.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, Greg. Thank you. At this point, we'll move on to business item number 8, discussion about employee hazard pay. Mr. Manager? This had come up briefly before. If you would refresh our memory.
Refresh our memory on exactly what we had discussed.
Sure. Previously, the council had asked us, the staff, to look at hazard pay or hazard bonus or something for COVID-19. Tim's not here, but Tim polled other jurisdictions and the league and talked to them about who was doing what. There's some communities that have added an additional 50 cents or $1 an hour to wages for people. Other ones have done bonuses for their staff. Some of them have done it for all their staff. Some of them have done it just for police and fire. So the information that I relayed to the council last was, while police and fire are very important and they have very dangerous jobs, their exposure to COVID-19, especially police department, isn't necessarily any higher than it is for the sanitation worker who's out there also dealing with the public every day, or even clerks that are collecting money and going hand in hand with people all the time. So my recommendation to the council at that time was, it's very difficult to identify who is and who is not essential or at risk in this COVID environment. We've had different people at all levels in every single department we have to take COVID leave at some point. Not everyone, but every department has been impacted at some level. So my recommendation to the council was, if they want to acknowledge the risk and the assistance and the hard work that the staff has done and our employees have done, that every employee receive a bonus of some type of the same amount for that work, that hard work and that dedication. My recommendation to the council at the time was $500, and I believe that can be absorbed in the current budget. We'll have to move some money around between departments to make it work, but a lot of the vacancies that we've had will help us with that. If we want to do more than that, then I would need to reevaluate where that money would come from.
Thank you very much. Any discussion on this topic?
I think I'm one of the ones that asked to bring it up, Mr. Scott. Thank you for bringing it to us. I would ask you for our next session, give us a spreadsheet of that and let's look moving forward. You know, the holidays just passed, but I was hoping that we could do something for that. But, you know, it's important that we acknowledge this. We're good stewards of the money. Our citizens, demand services, and our staff has not missed a beat COVID-19, and it has been extra demanding. And I'll say that we weren't able to have the holiday party, the other things that Shannon and you guys planned. I'd like to see us be able to.
Travis, I'd like to go a step further on that. I'd like to make a motion that we give all of the employees $500 as a hazardous bonus, hazard COVID bonus. It's the first of the year. I just think that we can do it. Let's just do it. I think that again, to your point, they've not missed a beat at all. And I mean, we've had heavy rains. Seems like every collection day, it's heavy raining and those guys out there working their tail off. And my understanding is how many you got short right now on the sanitation?
We had 8 people off today.
8 people off, yet they still did not miss a beat. So my recommendation, I make a motion that we go ahead and give them, we have $500 per employee for COVID hazard bonus.
Some discussion on that. I don't disagree. I'll second the motion, but I'd like to discuss. First of all, we need to define, Mr. Scott, was this for full-time and part-time? What was your numbers based on? Because it matters what it costs.
The numbers were based on full-time and permanent, what would be identified as permanent part-time. Certainly not part-time employees, most of which are not even employed with us at this. But some part-time people, like our collection clerks that work a set number of hours every week. Another example would be the fire inspector, the code enforcement officer. They're full-time people, they just don't work 40 hours a week. They're here a set number of hours. So all of those people, plus our full-time staff.
I guess we need to ask Greg when would be the best plan to implement this if we're going to take that action.
Well, we would implement it at the beginning of the next pay period.
Since this topic has come up, at the time the coronavirus hit, there was a substantial amount of federal funds that came in. I believe we were using that to offset some of the fire and police pay.
Yes, sir.
And that was, when did that come in? This fiscal year or last fiscal year?
It came in this fiscal year, and it's currently been placed in fund balance. We spent some of that money, but it was a little over $400,000 that came in. We spent less than $100,000.
Okay, because obviously the salary, those are the 2 highest paid departments that more than covered our reimbursement arrangement.
Yes, sir.
For the That's time we have a motion and a second on the table. All in favor?
Aye.
Passes.
Thank you very much.
All right, that gets us through all the business items for the night. At this point, time for council members' comments. Anyone have anything they'd like to discuss at this time?
Mayor Pro Tem Dunn, I do have a few things I'd like to bring up. First of all, I'd like to wish everybody a Happy New Year, and I look for a very prosperous time for our town. This COVID-19 has been a tremendous impact in many ways, personally and professionally, I think for everybody. Death in the family, sickness, illness, lack of being able to mingle, so to speak. I just want to ask everybody to stay diligent. We're almost over the curve. Hopefully, the vaccine works as it is, and it is here. The health department is working diligent to get that rolled out. You know, and do your research, and talk to your family, and make sure that they understand what's going on. The other thing I wanted to mention, and Councilmember Lee's not here tonight, but I wanted to give him a special thank you for his efforts during the holiday season. He suffered from some illness and had a plan to raise some toys and funds for children, and he was able to pull it off. And I thought it was tremendous of what he was able to do. Calling himself Santa 6. Very, very nice program. And I just wanted to say thank you personally to him and professionally on behalf of.
I got one, Mayor Pro Tem. Shortly after midnight, Friday night, or as the New Year, Friday morning as the New Year rolled in, my mother-in-law passed away. She'd been sick for a couple of weeks. She was an employee of the town with the aquatic center at the playroom. Loved working there, and unfortunately with the pandemic, when it hit, she wasn't able to work. She spoke about it almost like it was her family taking care of those children. She loved the employees, loved the members, and like I said, loved the children. But I just want to say a sincere thank you to some people that have reached out to us, and some in this room. So on behalf of her children, Kevin Driver, Jody Driver, Chad Driver, and of course my wife, Jennifer Wood, big thank you for all the support and love that we've received. I think last check, we've had well over 500 people reach out to us. Just my wife and myself, via phone calls, texts, visits, or social media. And it's been a tough time for our family because it just happened so sudden. But I just want you to continue to pray for our families. We mourn the loss of a special lady, and a lot of the children's parents has reached out to us and very heartbroken. So I just want to tell you thank you. I just appreciate it.
John, I'd like to say something, two things quickly. On Christmas Eve, about 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon, if y'all remember, it was raining, and we're talking about our staff now. And Lawrence Davis, who works with Lenny, out in my neighborhood, South Smithfield, where I live, and I was just riding around. It was raining, and one of the grate was clogged up, and it was 3 o'clock on Christmas Eve, and he was out there working. And what I'm trying to say is, if there's anybody who doubts that they don't deserve this COVID pay, see what I see and saw what I saw that day, even though it was just him, but I think it is a overall picture of our department and that sanitation department. And I was proud and sad at the same time to see him out there on Christmas Eve at 3 o'clock in the afternoon having to work. So very, very nice to see that. And, just tell him we'll give him a big thumbs up for that. It was Christmas Eve, and he was out there working. I was like, you need to go home. And he said, in just a few minutes. So anyhow, another thing, I like to thank our fire department because I got my wedding ring caught on something the other day, and they decided they had to take it off. I had to come over here after trying to go to a jewelry shop. I went to Selma and came back and finally ended up at our fire department to get my wedding ring cut off my finger where I had caught it on a barrel. But they did a fine job. If you ever need your ring cut off, go to the fire department. Also, they had a little bad incident there where several words were yelled at each other when they kind of twisted a little bit the wrong way, I thought. But overall, they did an outstanding job. And Travis was there, and I appreciate you looking out for me because about one time I almost hit the floor about to pass out, but they made it all good. So I'll live to see another day. So shout out to the fire department as well.
Again, I think we've touched on this so many times, but at this time of year, it's so important to spend time with our family and friends. And as you can see, everyone in here is wearing a mask, and everybody has, for the most part, had sacrifices this year where they couldn't do their normal activities. The vaccine is out there now. Hopefully things will improve, but it's still important for us to maintain our social distance, wash hands, sanitize as much as we can, and try to keep everyone safe. So, our employees are here doing their job. I think the money that we approved tonight is much needed. But it's really a tough time for a lot of people in a lot of ways. I just hope that everybody can keep praying for the people that are sick, and just keep everybody in your thoughts. Roger, Troy, if you like. At this time, we will move on to the town manager's report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem. Just a couple quick things this evening. The police department's newest canine, Titus, and his handler, Officer Jernigan, are on patrol now. That gives us our 2 canines and 2 canine officers back on patrol. You may recall within the last year to 18 months, both of our canines have been retired. We now have them new handlers and new dogs retrained, and they're out functioning fully and on the patrol. I also want to bring it to our community's attention, mostly on the west side of town, that beginning on January 19th, we are going to have people out installing automatic meters for water meters. Most of them are located in the front yards of people's houses. There'll be people out there, they'll be identified with next-gen identification because they're contract employees for the town, and they will be replacing those water meters. So have patience with them, and if you have any questions, give us a call, but don't be alarmed if someone is in your front yard working on those water meters, or knocking on your door saying they're going to work on your water meter, making sure that you're in a situation where they can shut your water off temporarily when they do that.
How long is that water shut off gonna be?
They would only shut it off once they're ready to pull the unit out and put in the new one. It's not very long, 20 minutes at the most in most situations. So it won't be any major thing. Also, we had ordered a new knuckle boom truck this year. It is in. It should be in service and out doing work for us tomorrow. We had to wait a couple days for the title to get here, but we have reviewed the truck, accepted it, and it will be fully functional as of tomorrow. Lastly, we're all aware that our Public Works Director has been ill and been off work for quite some time. Our old town manager, Pete Conant, stepped up for us and for his community again. We've asked him several times to assist us since he retired. He has been working as a Public Works Director. This will be his last week doing that. He's been working for the last about 7 weeks for us, filling that role and evaluating things and keeping that department moving forward. As mentioned earlier, we were hammering some lines for sewer problems, and he's been involved in that process and getting those things done. So I want to make a special shout out to him and a special thanks to him for his dedication as always to Smithfield and willingness to help us out when we are in situations of need. Thank Pete Conant. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. At this time, we will need to go into closed session in accordance with North Carolina General Statute 143-318.11A3. Do I have a motion?
I make a motion.
All in favor?
Aye.